Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Thomas, I know you have a lot of stuff you want to talk to people about, but you won't believe that. You know that portrait that was unveiled, of Barack and Michelle? Well, and the one of Barack is just like so crazy. It's so crazy. And there's so many funny things happening with it. I mean, it's a meme all by itself. But anyway, now it's coming out about the painter, about his background, and it's quite bizarre. And I'm putting together Truth News headlines tonight, and I just saw an article. It'll be posted. The painter has a background of actually putting sperm in his paint when he does portraits. Oh my gosh. And then you said, oh, that explains the 6 fingers on his right hand. The little one is maybe not his finger. Oh my gosh. Can you believe this? And it's going to hang with all the other presidents. That is so gross.
And the painting or picture of Michelle Obama, is just as ludicrous. And when you compare them to all the rest, the style is so different. It's as if it's a slap across the face.
But you know what? It's okay, because we need to have the reminder always of what happened to us when we fell this far.
Well, if you look at the full picture of Obama, Barry Soetoro, it's a 3-panel. It's a triptych, right? And in the first one, there he is, and that's the one we get to see, and that's the one that goes into the National Gallery, which is an insult to add that picture to it, that painting or whatever it is. It doesn't even look like a painting. But anyway, and then in the second of the two of the triptychs, he's getting eaten up by the forest, or the hedge is eating him, and by the third one, he's gone. I like that concept. That he's there, he's leaving, he's gone, because that's what we're going to talk about today, Betsy.
Okay, so that's all I had to say about that. Go, tell me what you were so excited. What have you been thinking about?
Well, like we said the last time we talked, Betsy, I was laughing about Jonathan Weiner. Well, first you were saying, how's the conclave doing? And I said, they're all sitting back eating cheesecake, drinking cappuccinos, celebrating, because we're just laughing. All you have to do is watch mainstream media and you're seeing the rats jump off the ship. And so with Jonathan Weiner? Anyway, the Department of State official, direct friend of Hillary Clinton, who recently came out and said, oh, I had to give a dossier I created personally on Trump to Christopher Steele because I thought the Russians were coming. And I made a lot of fun of that. Can you imagine? It's almost as bad as Donna Brazile saying that she closed her curtains because she was afraid Russian snipers were going to shoot her after Seth Rich was murdered by people who were directly connected to her. And, we know about that. So, and then you get to see one person after the next coming out with their alibis, coming out trying to get ahead of the narrative, to get the spin, to be the tail that wags the dog. It doesn't work that way anymore, you silly, stupid criminal people in Washington, D.C. We don't believe the mainstream media. The alternative media is exposing you. We don't have amnesia. We don't every single night turn on the TV and forget all of history and then just believe what we see, like a guppy or a goldfish or perhaps a dog. As John Barnwell likes to say, goes in the next room, comes back, he's so happy to see you, it's like the first time he's ever seen you. Okay, yeah, well, that's what we're talking about with, I guess, who they think is watching them, because Susan Rice just came out, and what I really liked to see was Lindsey Graham and Grassley brought this particular text message out that they found, because it was so odd. And we consider it just to be another thing to order a second cappuccino on and perhaps a second piece of cheesecake, because we're just laughing our rears off. Now, first off, let me deride Susan Rice as much as I can. Go and put in the search bar Susan Rice's name, and you'll see citizens' intelligence reports that tell you that she is a genocidist. She is personally responsible for the death of 4.5 million Africans. Obama put her in charge of the entire continent of Africa. One person, and there were wars in North and South Sudan, in Congo, in Libya, in Somalia, in on and on and on. A dozen countries that she basically started so that corporations could get their resources and steal them without, having any problems. And that's what she did. She fleeced Africa. While Darfur was going on, she did nothing. While Rwanda went on, she did nothing. She did nothing about anything. She promoted genocide in Africa. This is who the National Security Advisor was for Barack Obama, one of the worst murderers in modern history. Now, she was the one found unmasking in the SCIF, in the super secret room in the White House, right? And then she says, I didn't unmask anything. And then she came out later and said, yeah, I unmasked stuff. Oh, no, I didn't. And then she came out the third time and said, I unmasked things and I'm proud that I did. All of us we're very, very proud that we've unmasked things. And unmasking is completely normal and there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, there is, if it was part of the dossier and if it was unmasking Trump and his team, which it was, we know. And why do we know? Because on the day of the inauguration, just before Trump took his oath, she texted herself, Susan Rice texted herself, a memo of the recollection of her meeting in the White House with Barack Obama, James Comey, and the crew with the DNC. So, in other words, it was basically, again, one of these Democratic National Committee meetings at the White House with Comey there and with Susan Rice there and others. So, what does she state in this memo, in this text? Which, as you probably have heard me say, you go look this up, Robert Mueller is most famous for being able to change what is evidence in any federal case. So he says, and it's now a law, that if he, as a law enforcement agent or someone an elected official like in the National Security Council, writes a note, it is true.
Oh, yes.
So what does she write in her note? She writes the most bizarre thing that she could possibly write. This made us choke on our cheesecake, I swear. Think of this.
Yes.
She just fingered Obama.
Yes.
100% proof in her attempt to say that Obama was actually clean as a whistle because they're sitting having this meeting, and I'll tell you why he's been fingered, because she's too stupid to know. But what she's saying is, Obama said 3 times to Comey and everyone to make sure Comey knew, absolutely, everybody had to agree that this investigation of Donald Trump's team and Russia collusion in the election, and she's writing this January 20th about a meeting that happened January the 5th. In that meeting, she's saying that Obama said, you must do it by the book 3 times. You must do it by the book. You must do it by the book. Wait, do what by the book? And this is where she just screwed up. She tried to say that Obama was trying to be the clean gene. He was trying to be, let's for once follow the rule of law. No, that was her trying to exonerate herself with her own alibi, her own spin, getting ahead of the narrative, and basically trying to imprint something into our brain, saying that Obama is innocent when in fact she just fingered him.
Okay, I don't understand that. Say it in another way.
They're in the White House.
Yes.
Comey's there.
Yes.
Let's just talk about Comey, Susan, and Obama. Okay, they're there. What are they discussing? Something that doesn't exist, something that Comey swore before Congress 3 times didn't exist. There was no investigation.
That's right.
On Trump.
Okay.
Wrong. We now have a meeting where Susan Rice say they were discussing it. Not only do we have her saying that they're discussing it, we have Obama turning to Comey and saying, I want you to keep me posted on this, up to date on this.
That's right.
Over the next weeks. Insinuating that there may not even be an inauguration in 15 days. Insinuating that this investigation is so important that he's coming out of the closet, and Susan Rice is accusing him of saying, oh no, we go forward with this investigation by the book, by the book, by the book. Now, let's look at what was really being said, shall we? By the book, by the book, by the book means we've been caught. We need to cover our trail. So steal everything that isn't by the book. Remember, some of the last things Obama did was he wrote an executive order stating that the entire national security apparatus that is run through the NSA for surveilling every person practically on the face of the earth with a digital device, certainly every American, that information, poor Admiral Rogers, needs to be shared with all intelligence agencies, and he even opened it up to everybody. Now, you think, why would he do that? That's to try to cover the base that it already was open. He wrote an executive order to say that he orders them to do what they were already doing. They're already taking the NSA stuff. They're already surveilling Trump and through Manafort, through Page, through Georgie Porgy, and through Flynn, as well as the unmasking of Susan Rice, as well as everyone else who was swept up in it, upstream and downstream. So they're already doing this. So what was he actually saying with that executive order? And why would, in the last weeks that he's in the White House, he says, and everyone heard this because he said it over and over again. He said, I want everyone in my administration to preserve the evidence against Donald Trump and Putin's meddling in the election. How many times did he say that in public? Over and over again, to try to tell us there's going to be a coup coming. To try to tell us there would be no inauguration, to try to tell us now everyone now had the dossier and all the super secret information that the NSA had on Trump, and everyone was ordered to go after Trump. And when he said preserve the documents, that's not what he was saying. He was saying hide the documents that showed we had a conspiracy for a coup. Hide them now in case we don't have the coup, in case we can't stop Donald Trump. They still believed at that moment, because they just got the dossier October 20th, days before the election. He's now the president-elect, and they're still going forward full speed. That's what Susan Rice's text actually says. And that they are doing what Obama said he never did. He said he never talks to the Justice Department and about the FBI about any investigations. He also said there was no investigation. Comey said there was no investigation 3 times at Trump and 3 times under testimony in Congress. That was a counterintelligence operation. Started with George Papadopoulos' international FISA warrant, which will eventually come out. But it didn't get passed. It got failed in July. It didn't get passed until October. Why would they still go through it? They just lost the election. There was nothing they could do. The dossier wasn't going to help them. It had already been released. They had started releasing it since July because Comey had a big mouth and he couldn't hold back until October, and because it was all coming unraveled because he had too many players, too many spies, all doing crazy stuff at once. He couldn't coordinate them all. This is seen by what we now see from the DOJ and the FBI's 2,000 pages they gave to the Congress to look at, which we now have as the Nunes memo. But we also have Grassley's information, and we have Grassley's list of who they're going after. And so we get to sit back, and we did a whole show on this. Who's on Grassley's list? Let's make a joke about each one of them and go down the list. And we went over Cody Shearer. We went over Sidney Blumenthal. We went over Jonathan Weiner. We went over all of these people. Of course they're going to jump the ship. Of course Susan Rice, just like James Clapper. Why do you think John Brennan is out in the news now trying to cover his rear? This is all CYA, we call it in the government, cover your ass. So why is he out there? Because he's the one that it first started with. He admitted that in his own testimony. We heard it. I screamed and yelled. That's criminal, what he did. He said he created. He got the dossier. He funded the dossier. He went out and searched for people who had dirt on Trump. We know that the FBI then sent, through the millions of dollars that Podesta and Hillary Clinton, through Mark Elias at Perkins Coie, paid Fusion GPS millions of dollars. Only $180,000 went to Christopher Steele, who supposedly wrote the dossier. Where did the other millions go? I can tell you where it went. It went to people like Cody Shearer, who went for 6 months. He went all over Europe trying to find a film that the Russians had told people they had, some stupid Russians, not the real, government Russians, said they had of Trump. So he went in search of it. Imagine how much money he spent. Imagine how much money they had to spend framing George Papadopoulos. Imagine what they had to do to set up Carter Page to get those talks that he went and did. Imagine what they had to do to have Felix Sater. And now, who's the other guy? The new guy. Of course, Sergei Milian, that everyone is saying is dead. Sergei Milian Panchenko. He was another Comey spy. Comey had Franklin Foer, another Comey spy. We had all these things going on. Comey couldn't handle it. And so what do we see? Oh my heavens, we just saw Susan Rice throw Comey and Obama under the bus. First off, there is no investigation that they were just talking about that he said to continue and to keep him updates on. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page said in their text that the POTUS wanted an update. And they said it like it's a standard thing. An update on the Russian, what was called the Trump operation. We can get into all the names it was called, for heaven's sakes. The frame-ups that Comey did, and then the fake dossier and Carter Page and the whole thing, all that stuff. You know, he wanted an update on it. He wanted to know if one of those things was going to stick. And when none of them stuck, on January 5th, he committed treason. And we have that in Susan Rice's own words because Mueller and Comey made a law that says that a federal officer or a federal elected official in the National Security Council, if they make a note, it's the truth. So Susan Rice's text message is the truth. Obama had full knowledge of the Russian investigation, the dossier. 4 days before, Comey had insisted on meeting alone with Trump to give him an update on this dossier. He did not give him the dossier. He lied to him and gave him a one-page executive summary that wasn't even one page. But we do know that he for sure, because this was in the public repeatedly, that he had given Obama full updates on the dossier long before that. So Obama was completely complicit, and now we have Susan Rice's own testimony of her text, because that's the way the Fed set it up. That's why Comey was going to use his notes, his memos, to impeach, first off, to make sure Trump didn't get elected, second off, to make sure he would be, from President-elect, never inaugurated, and third off, that he would continue what was the Trump operation, turned into the small group, turned into the secret society, turned into the Mueller investigation, which started as a FBI counterintelligence operation, not a criminal investigation. We now have the 100% proof that we were hoping for. We thought it would come through Susan Rice because she had used the White House skiff to unmask things, so we know that Obama would have seen them. Especially since we don't know what she did actually unmask, but especially since we assume that it would be quite a bit of unmasking and that certainly it would be impossible for Obama not to have known of that. But that then also would include Valerie Jarrett, who was in that meeting. At that point, it was John Kerry, who was in that meeting, and representatives of the DNC and Hillary's direct campaign. So what we have is proof in her own text message of treason in the White House, in the Oval Office with Obama. So could you get me another piece of cheesecake, because I choked on the last one, and I'm so happy that I did a very awful thing, Betsy. Can I confess to you what I did?
Well, I tell you what, since we're like, this is all digital, instead of cheesecake, if people gave you a thumbs up and shared the video, that'd be as good as cheesecake.
That'd be my dopamine hit.
That's right. Because you
right.
like your numbers. Okay, so what?
Well, metrics. I mean, who can not like metrics?
Well, apparently on that painting that I was talking about, that extra digit, that didn't have a lot of metrics.
No, it looked like a little baby finger under his finger. It looked like Obama had 6 fingers, and everybody's talking about Obama has 6 fingers, and the hedge ate him. Now, that's a really, really bizarre thing that you would even be associated with, let alone try to pass off as your gift to the National Gallery, which is probably the greatest embarrassment that we've ever seen a president donate to the National Gallery. I don't know what they can possibly do with it now that they know that what is in the paint. Is anyone ever going to not know that once they hear that?
And what it represents. So think of the paintings that this man has painted prior to this one. They were very disturbing.
So basically what we're saying is keep watching as the rats jump off the ship and as Obama gets more fingered, as the people below him. You see what? You want me to really interpret what Susan Rice's text was? Because it was hysterical watching these two.
I'm sensing that people are really wanting you to talk to them some more. They want a little bit more of Thomas right now. I'm feeling that. And right, people out there? Yeah. Come on. You're in a stream, because what you're doing is like you're more than connecting the dots. You're showing us.
3 of them are nodding their head, Betsy, but I'm not sure whether or not they are asking for more coffee. But anyway, I want to confess to you, Betsy, if I may. I committed a cardinal sin. I came onto this radio show with you. See, that's how old I am. Radio show with you, to tape a recording with you, not having read the latest news cycle from Truth News Headlines. And let me tell you, that is a fatal mistake to all of you out there listening. Don't attempt to have an educated conversation with anyone about the news unless you have the current news cycle from Truth News Headlines, because you're just not going to have it. So I am going in the blind here. There could have been 10 times bigger news while I was at the dentist and couldn't get over here. And now I come back and I'm behind a whole half a day news cycle. So Betsy, I apologize in case something I've said has been usurped by more current news. And let's just say that I have not confirmed this with the conclave, but we knew that this would happen because we had predicted a long time ago that it was Susan Rice who would blow it. And she did blow it. And so Clapper's blowing it, and James Brennan's blowing it, and Comey's blowing it. But what I like, see, let me translate what her text message actually means in Washington, D.C. lawyer fixer legalese.
There you go.
You want to know what it really means?
Yeah, fill that gap in for folks.
I am willing to turn state's evidence against Barack Obama / Barry Soetoro. That's what it means. She just gave us the evidence that she would turn against him to tell the full truth, because she just admitted she knew the truth and admitted that and made it look like she was coming to his aid by saying he was going to do it by the book, by the book, by the book. By the book. You can't conduct treason and sedition by the book, Barry Soetoro. That isn't the way that works. So this is one of the best pieces of news we've had in a long time. It will just be a matter of time to see whether or not we will actually, in America, for once realize that the federalism inside of Washington, D.C.'s walls is controlled by one person, the head law enforcement officer in Washington, D.C., which is a state unto itself, basically a nation unto itself, with laws and courts to support it. And when in 1800, because I once quoted this wrong in something, the Incorporation Papers are 1871, but in 1781, but in 1781 they incorporated to have Washington, D.C., but they didn't move there for 9 years. So did I say that wrong again? In 1800, the President of the United States had brought the Congress to Capitol Hill to protect it with the Marines and the Navy from the Potomac and from the Naval Observatory. And then he brought the Supreme Court there to protect them. And so for the first time, they had those 3 branches in one place within the confines of Washington, D.C., which has a whole set of rules that y'all have never even heard of. One day we'll talk about federalism and tell you the fraud of federalism. It should be closed down tomorrow. But anyway.
Well, that's why these federal courts keep pulling back on DACA. And this is important because a second federal court that was on headlines you haven't seen yet is telling Trump, no, you can't do this. DACA's got to continue.
Of course, he can't do DACA.
Wait a minute.
I told everybody that from the beginning.
No, here's my point, is that we really have to see these federal courts as globalists. They're doing the will of the globalists. That's why they keep thwarting what Trump is doing with immigration.
Federalism is a charter. that a Jesuit signed, basically with the British Crown and the Vatican, also which have their own city-states, called the City of London and the Vatican City. And they're basically exempt from everything. They have their own laws, their own rules, their own everything. And those three places, Washington, D.C., City of London, and Vatican City. Now, who rules Washington, D.C.? They forget this. The head sheriff in town. They don't get this. People don't understand that when the FBI comes in anywhere, they have to have the sheriff of that county's permission or they can't act. Isn't that amazing? Even for counterintelligence for the FBI. They have to have the sheriff's permission. That is the highest law enforcement agent in any county. So let's take a big city. The county that it's in, that sheriff is more powerful than, say, the head of the chief of the police for a major metropolitan area. And when the FBI comes into that city, they have to have the sheriff's permission to do any work. Now, who do you think is the sheriff of Washington, D.C., District of Columbia? By the way, Columbia is a great being. She's the being of wisdom. She's the being of Sophia. She's the being of that stands atop of the Capitol. She's the being that was leading liberty, the being they call her Liberty, but her real name is Columbia. And anyway, let me not get distracted. Who do you think the head sheriff in Washington, D.C. is? That would be the president. He can arrest all of them. This is what they don't know. They don't need the FBI.
Oh,
I told you this before.
Oh, you mean
U.S.
President?
Marshals can arrest all of them and put them in FEMA camps if he wants to, because he, just like on Homeland, on Showtime, was it Showtime?
Yeah.
Showtime. What did the president do? There was an attempted assassination on her, so she arrested the top 200 people in all those agencies. By the way, Trump just closed 22 of the 78 agencies. Bravo. And one of them is the DARPA version, but in the energy field, which is totally evil. So ending DARPA with energy is one of the greatest victories of our times. People won't even realize it happened. But anyway, he is the head sheriff. He is the head law enforcement agent.
Oh, a picture comes to mind.
He can arrest the entire Supreme Court if he wants.
Ooh, I mean, like could have a sheriff hat on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
white hat. He had that big...
Yeah, I know. I put that on Truth News headlines. I really like that picture. So I think I'm going to use that for the thumbnail.
Yeah, because there's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah.
And he is the fastest draw in town. And, you know, it's a high noon at OK Corral here because what we have is an unprecedented... And we've named the 36 or so people who are really the evil criminal cabal that has been working out of the White House since George Bush Sr. became vice president under Reagan. And we've named these people, and these people are all being, practically all of them are being named now, and all the people below them, they're jumping ship. And what did Jonathan, is his name Jonathan? Anyway, what did attorney... No, he would be, what would his title be?
Well,
he was fourth in charge. What did Weiner do? Weiner said the same thing. I'll turn state's evidence. The Russians were coming. I was told by Obama. Here is the email that went to every federal employee saying, secure all evidence concerning Donald Trump and Russian collusion in the election. Remember what was her name who came out who was going crazy on the news saying, he told us to do it, he told us to do it.
Farkas. Evelyn Farkas?
Evelyn Farkas,
Yeah.
perfect example. Comes on the news one time and is so hysterical because the Russians are coming, that she can't say it fast enough that she was just doing doing Obama's orders by resisting her boss, Trump's orders. Unbelievable that the resistance went on.
But maybe they're that
From the White
brainwashed.
House.
Maybe they are that brainwashed.
Well, of course they are. They
Because-
thought they were going on. They all thought they had life positions because Hillary, after her 8 years, was just going to become the queen. And then they were going to take her out and replace her with a robot. So, you know, it was all set up. It was going to be the United States of North America, which would have included Canada and Mexico, and would have been ruled by Britain, as basically we still are because of the Charter of Federalism.
But see, schools today have to teach the government's way of how we view history, and so people forget. They don't know this history. And they don't pay attention in class, and then you get to college, it's very liberal, that point of view, so people don't know this, and it would come as a shock to them. But this is important to let people know.
Absolutely, Betsy. These are British bankers, Rothschild and his gang, and the German bankers, Loeb and the Goldman and Sachs and Lehman Brothers. All, if you take those bankers from Holland, Germany, and Britain who came to America, they are the real owners of the Federal Reserve, which is a fake debt. So for all of you who think Trump is going crazy by saying that for the next 5 years there won't be a balanced budget and there's going to be $7 trillion spent over the next 10 years for infrastructure, but after 5 years it will reverse and all the money that was put into the infrastructure will then create a new economy. Well, if we believe that, then there won't be any debt. But let's just say that if you understand what Trump is doing, who cares what the debt to the Fed is?
Yeah, it's like when you
run it up.
Yeah, it's like when you know you're getting ready to go bankrupt.
Okay.
You just like spend it all.
$7.1 trillion spent by the Bushes, Obama, and Clinton in the Iraq, Afghanistan, Middle East nonsense. $1 billion a year paid by Obama to ISIS, just one faction. Don't get me started. Trump brought back $5 trillion off of one deal. Canceled the fake climate accord, which was only going to feed the pockets of bankers. When you say City of London, Vatican City, you're talking about the biggest bankers in the world, because the Knights of Malta work through the Vatican Bank, which works through Vatican City, which is exempt from everything. That's why all the dirty money used to run through the Vatican Bank. Everybody knew that. Come on, how many people do they have to string up?
But they've dumbed us all down now. People don't know this, Thomas. And then we get complacent and we don't know our place in the world. Before you know it, we're slaves to the system, but we don't even know we're slaves.
We have a president trying to overthrow a duly elected president on his way out. And I guess they just thought, and a year later, I mentioned this, 2 or 3 newspapers just a few weeks ago said, well, if Mueller's investigation finds collusion, then we can just make Hillary president. That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard that words were attached to. That could not possibly happen. Even if he was impeached, there would be Pence. Even if there wasn't Pence, there would be stupid Paul Ryan. Please. The insanity being spoken by people in D.C. is because they're rats jumping off the ship. The louder they are squealing, the more guilty they are. And what did we just find out? Oh, lo and behold, here, Betsy, help me pat myself on the back. Sorry, Conclave members. Yeah, all 3 of you, get your cheesecake out of your mouth. Who did I say delivered the dossier to Yahoo News? John McCain through the CIA. And now what do we find out? Oh, it was John McCain through the CIA. So every day I'm sitting back collecting money off bets from my Conclave members who don't believe me when I make these crazy personal predictions which come true. I'm not predicting. I'm simply following the path of evil. This is what they always do. They're not smart. They're evilly clever because they get in with their groups of thieves and then they have their own code of thieves. But that's not smart, and that's certainly not wise, and it's certainly not moral. And the reason they can't get Trump, he's moral. He's got no bad aspects astrologically whatsoever. He's the rising phoenix out of the fire, and the hotter it gets, the more the others burn up, not him. So I like to laugh, and that's when and as we do, Odin and Frigg, we make our bets about what humans are going to do. So you and I, we sit here and we put cookies down as our bets on what's going to happen. And I bet a long time ago that Susan Rice was going to be Barack Obama's undoing.